It's been a long break between last December.
At the Basque Sturgeon Redwater.
It's a basket.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my great honor and privilege today to rise in response to the speech from the throne. I know that in doing so, I have some rather large boots to fill. My father, Leo Piquette, represented a large part of my present riding of Athabasca Sturgeon Redwater, second time, from 1986 to 1989. And he used the occasion of his response to lay claim his right to speak French at the legislature due to it being enshrined in law in the Northwest Territories Act. Later, he asked a question in French during question period to prove that point and was ruled out of order by the Speaker of the day. And this is what set off the famous Piquette affair, as many of you today may still remember. His eventual vindication and the government's response to it has now led to not only French being allowed in the legislature, and this is a right that many of my colleagues have availed themselves of, but all languages. And just thank you. All right. However, this also does mean that I'll have to come up with my own theme for my maiden speech. Now, by the way, once he had made his point concerning the French language, he actually winged the rest of his speech. What did he say? He said, I'm speaking straight from the heart, and so he did. And although I do admire my father's courage in winging his maiden speech, I'm not so certain I want to do quite the same thing. However, that does not mean that I'll be speaking any less from the heart than he. And I am also fortunate in that there are certainly no shortage of issues to discuss. Our Lieutenant Governor, my apologies, Mr. Speaker, our Lieutenant Governor gave an excellent throne speech yesterday, and there is a lot to talk about. One thing I know that will really resonate with the talented and hardworking and fundamentally decent folk that I have the privilege of representing is, okay, maybe I'm winging a little bit there, Mr. Speaker, skipping around here. Fine folks with the 4 counties, 1 First Nations reserve, and the many municipalities, incorporated and unincorporated, that I have the great honor to represent. Is the statements that she said in her closing remarks yesterday, and which I quote, Albertans want to build an economy that is widely diversified and resilient to energy price swings, an economy that captures the full value of our resources, holds the promise of prosperous futures for our children, and shares its benefits widely and fairly among all Albertans. Mr. Speaker, these are words well said. And they are also a very fair approximation of what my constituents have been telling me at doorsteps and in get-togethers and in meetings across the riding. It also speaks directly to the great sense of frustration that I felt myself as a lifelong resident of this province and in my various roles as teacher, business person, and parent. And indeed, it's one of the major motivations for my having put my own hat in the ring this spring. Like so many of my friends and neighbors, I'd gotten sick and tired of hearing the same old excuses for why we seem to be so unsuccessful in not only capturing fair value for our common resources, but also in preparing ourselves against the inevitable bust that followed. After all, how many old booms do we need to let slip by before getting things right? How many knee-jerk and destructive reactions to the inevitable bust and decline of revenues did we have to suffer through? This is something that I was, and I'm still convinced we can get better at. Although I admit this is not an easy nor a new problem. However, I'm very proud that I'm part of a government that is sincerely endeavoring to do its best to change that. Now, I'm saying that this is not a new problem. In fact, this has been an issue that has been a problem for Alberta since there was an Alberta. Alberta has always had an over-reliance on a few very cyclical commodity or resource-based industries. Energy is only the most current. We've had to navigate the centuries-old tension between concerted efforts to develop a few key resources necessary to help provide a prosperous future if we want ourselves and for our children, while at the same time not becoming so dependent on them so that when prices crash, that all the good work wrought with their use does not come crashing down as well. Now, although many today think of energy when they think of Alberta, it was not so many years ago that they would have thought of wheat instead. It was the lure of cheap land and high wheat prices that brought the waves of hopeful settlers from across Canada and indeed from around the world into Alberta. These would actually, in fact, include my own great-great-grandparents who made the trek from Quebec and who were indeed the first settlers in Donutville, which is just a short drive away from where I presently live in Boyle, Alberta. These are also the same people that populated the fine communities of Athabasca, Smoky Lake, Warspite, Sedna, Radway, Redwater, Gibbons, Bonnecourt, Thorhild, and many others. Hopefully not too many of my constituents are listening today for this in case I park up the community, but be sure that I know where they are. In turn, these communities boomed, both as service centers, both as service centers for the rapidly arriving homesteaders, but also born on the railway-driven hope that each new village might become the great city of the future. A hope that unfortunately was dashed when drought and the collapse in wheat prices in 1914 caused a crash so spectacular that it took decades to recover from. For example, it took Athabasca, one of the older communities in my riding, a good 60 years to get back to the population level it had achieved in 1914. Some of the communities in my riding have never achieved those original levels. So it's never been an easy thing. Just the same, however, many farmers did stay behind, and over time they learned how to survive the vagaries of the weather and of grain prices, and even prosper, despite the often poor commodity prices, the rapacity of the grain monopolies, the railways, and the Eastern merchants. Having grown up on a mixed family farm myself, I have to say that I have the utmost respect for the kind of hard work that it took, and the work and struggles that they had to go through to come up with solutions to these problems. Now, how did they come up with these solutions? They did this by working together, by organizing their own producer cooperatives and associations, by working together with their friends and neighbors to build corduroy roads over muskegs to market, and finally, by forming their own government, a government of farmers for farmers. That government, the United Farmers of Alberta, is a government that I'm proud to say the NDP in Alberta is a direct descendant of. I don't think it's any accident that as we find ourselves in similar times, we have a similar type of government. Part of my writing also helped set off the next great boom. Redwater went from a sleepy farming hamlet of about 140 people to a boomtown in just a few short years when oil was discovered there in 1948, only a year after the Great Find in Leduc. Thus began the next great phase in the Alberta boom and bust cycle, a cycle that dominates our economy and politics to this very day. This cycle is obviously not an easy problem to solve, and it is also definitely not the kind of problem that has only one solution. It needs many solutions. And I'm happy to say that many of these solutions can actually be found within my own riding. Okay, actually it's not customary to talk during somebody's maiden speech. All right. Thus I'm happy to report that I represent the riding that despite the very challenging times we're in today is still holding its own. Now, what are these sectors that are holding their own? Well, first of all, we're fortunate to have a very strong and innovative agricultural sector with very progressive farmers using world-class techniques and sustainable farming methods to produce agricultural products and commodities that are second to none in the world. We also are blessed with a very vibrant and innovative tourism sector. And these would include community-driven initiatives such as Bonnecourt's Dark Skies certification, Bonnecourt is in fact the only community in Canada, one of the first in North America, to be certified for having dark skies sufficient to see all the stars we can see. We also have great work in developing some of our heritage resources, such as Métis Crossing, Victoria Trail, and the remarkable Iron Horse Trail that starts up from Smoky Lake in my area, kind of connects east and west. We also have unique attractions such as Jurassic Forest, Prairie Garden, rapidly growing historic park in Gibbons, and we have great festivals and rodeos across the entire riding, including the famous Smoky Lake Pumpkin Festival, where I was pleased to give the opening remarks this year, Boyle's Rodeo Days, the Thorhild Stampede, the Athabasca Magnificent River Rats Festival, Redwater Discovery Days, Bonnecourt Harvest Days, and, well, the list goes on. But needless to say that during the summer I get the opportunity to see a lot of different events and to eat a lot of excellent pancakes. All right. Now, we also are very fortunate to have a strong forestry product sector. Athabasca Sturgeon Redwater is the home of Alberta Pacific Forest Products, which at conception was the largest craft pulp mill in the Americas, and which today still remains a leader in sustainability and innovation. We are also quite recently home to a saltwood lumber mill in my own home community of Boyle, Alberta, and this is a mill that I'm hoping we'll be able to have reopened soon. We are also extremely fortunate to be the home of Athabasca University. Athabasca University is a world leader in distance education, and it's through their innovative approach that we're able to bring high-quality, degree-granting post-secondary education to students in rural communities across the province and to non-conventional students from across the world. Through this approach, we have been able to retrain the leaders and innovators that we will need for tomorrow's diverse economy within their own communities. Athabasca University is not only an exemplar of distance education, it's also exemplar of anchoring high-quality knowledge sector jobs in rural communities. Shown that this is something that is possible and desirable to do, and for the community of Athabasca, the university being there has been a real saving grace. Now, finally, and especially relevant to the work going forward to diversify Alberta's economy, our riding is home to the Northwest Partnership's upgraded, well, actually, the Northwest Partnership's refinery project, which at last count is providing over 8,500 direct jobs, both on site and in the surrounding communities. But there are also other notable employers in that area, including Pembina Pipelines, Agrium Fertilizers, MG Williams, and I'm very hopeful that with our royalty tax credit, there'll be many more enterprises setting up and helping diversify our economy in that area. Now, the success of this development is due to a very far-sighted and I think excellently conceived partnership between government and industry. The Industrial Heartland Association, which is a unique partnership between municipalities, industry leaders, and provides a single point of contact to facilitate economic development and diversification in the area, as well as the land base. I'm quite confident that our new Economic Development Ministry, which is based on a very similar philosophy, is going to be successful in providing those types of jobs across the province. Finally, I would be remiss, of course, not to mention Canadian Forces based Edmonton, which is a central feature of my constituency and serves to not only protect Canadians, but is also a powerful center of economic activity for our region. It is by building on our existing strengths, as the Lieutenant Governor has stated, capturing the full value of our resources, that we will succeed. But what resources are we talking about? I think that our greatest resource all along has been the hardworking, resourceful, and compassionate folk that I have the great privilege to represent. If we remember our history and respect the contributions of those who went before us, while at the same time having the courage to make the kinds of changes we will need in order to make, we will need in order to secure that prosperous future we all want for ourselves and for our children, then I think things will work out just fine for us. And I pledge to my constituents that I will do my absolute utmost to make this so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.